ridiculous to see how many people still think and believe that the financial crisis of 2008, 2009 was caused by derivatives, right? It's really mind-blowing. Still see comments under finance videos, documentaries talking about derivatives. Derivatives were not the cause of the financial crisis. Simply put, derivatives could never be a single issue or reason for financial crisis because they're artificially attached and created to the real assets. Let me put it simply. So the derivatives of 0809 financial crisis essentially were attached to the mortgages that banks used to give to the borrowers, right? The loans were the actual investment vehicles. Banks give loans, banks make money on these loans. The problem is that the banks decided that they can actually double dip, make money on the same loans multiple times by creating other derivatives as a financial instruments, something that later were known as a mortgage-backed securities. This was the derivatives on the market during the financial crisis. So all of these mortgage-backed securities were packaged and sold as a derivatives. Here is why the derivatives alone couldn't cause financial crisis. The derivatives, value of the derivatives could go to zero, but if the real assets that these derivatives derive from remain the same, if all the loans to the banks are in good standing, the derivatives go to zero, there is no financial crisis. Remember, if the Federal Reserve show up and said, don't worry, all the bad loans we are going to cover, we're going to print the money, there will be not single gap accounting, there will be no holes in the actual balance sheet, we're going to cover all the bad loans. Then there will not have been a financial crisis because the actual importance is the underlying asset, which were the loans. If the loans were covered, if the loans were secured and saved and paid fully, the banks wouldn't have a bad balance sheet, even if all the derivatives, which in those cases were mortgage-backed securities, right, go to zero. Still, a lot of people don't understand this. This is very, very simply explained. Derivatives are artificial financial instrument that has no real heavy sentiment on the market. Derivatives are basically the cherry on top. The whole market goes particular direction. The market is so expensive, you don't want to actually own the security because you have to drop much more money. That's why you go and you leverage with something artificial that, giving basic example, give you some exposure. And now I'm going to give you even better, very easy example that happened the last 3 years. Remember Archegos capital management and how they actually failed. Archegos didn't held the positions in the actual equity of the stocks, Discover, Warner, whatever. What he did, he actually go to the investment banks and he said, I want to create a total return swap position, which basically means, hey, bank, could you buy these stocks for me, hold these stocks for me, I'm going to pay you a small fee, and if the price action goes up, I'm going to benefit from it, right? The difference between the open position of total return swap to the pricing on the upward trajectory minus the interest that Archegos pays with the investment banks, boom, Archegos makes money. Why Archegos did this? The market was overhyped. He didn't have so much money to buy millions of shares of all these big tech companies. Point number one. Point number two, Archegos realized that if he buys the stocks, he will have the stocks and the exposure on his own books. Why this is a problem? Well, if he goes to the second bank and wants to borrow $100 million, they will say, cool, let's see your portfolio, let's see your exposure. But because the bank number one, in this case could be Credit Suisse, which lost around $5 billion in this particular trade, hold all the particular positions. He didn't have any positions on his portfolio. It was clean. Basically, all of his positions and exposure were hidden because all the total return swaps were held from the banks. Investment banks basically secure the deal and hedge the position. And this is where the point number two, why derivatives couldn't cause a financial crisis, is real. Archegos lost $3 billion ballpark in a matter of 7 days. This didn't cause a financial crisis. It caused a major financial losses for Archegos and a couple of counterparty investment banks. Like I said, Credit Suisse lost ballpark of $5 billion. And a couple of other banks, I don't remember which ones were actually also involved. But this shows you how isolated case and impact can have the derivative markets. Minuscule. Why? Because if the Archegos purchase these particular stocks and held these stocks and the market dropped like it actually did, he will not be liquidated. He could still manage the same portfolio, be down 40, 20, 30%, but still not going to be liquidated. It's not going to be filed for bankruptcy. It's not going to be owning billions of dollars. The banks will not be losing billions of dollars because he held the assets. If the assets go down to 40, 50, 60% growth on the market, then you could have financial crisis because the underlying security and value has actually lost its most important part of the actual sentiment. But if the derivative market goes bust, no one cares. Everyone knows it's artificially created and attached to the real asset. This is why the financial crisis of 08, 09 was so big, because the loans went bad, the derivatives went bad, everything goes bust. So the whole value of the actual underlying stocks and securities related to the banks, related to the loans, related to all the mortgage brokers, related to all the loans banks couldn't collect back, because all the mortgage-backed securities effectively go bust. This is why the credit default swap on Macroeconomics, which was insurance, that if this happens, I'm going to make this work pretty well, right? This is why I want to stop seeing these stupid comments that derivative market caused the 08, 09 financial crisis, because it's not possible. It's simply mathematically not possible, because artificially created elements, investment instruments, who didn't exist during the run-up, sometimes in the middle of the bubble reappear, created from the PhDs of finance and some of the algorithmic traders, and later evaporated because they weren't there in the first place, right? It couldn't simply cause the financial crisis. I'm trying to give you a very, very simple explanation. And when you see how our Archegos situation played out, a company on Wall Street could lose $20+ billion, and banks as a counterparty could lose billions of dollars. And that's isolated, losses within their system. 3-4 companies. There's no impact on the macroeconomics. You understand how derivative markets couldn't really work and have impact on the overall economy. That's what I'm trying to explain. And this is why don't let people, talk nonsense. Same things is related to the options market, right? It couldn't really have major impact on the overall macroeconomics. That's why people who understand the markets, and get the leverage positions, they understand that the losses are isolated to themselves and to their counterparties. You borrow money from this bank, if things go bust, you're gonna lose money, and the bank gonna lose money, but the Federal Reserve doesn't care. The government doesn't care. All the research companies, analytical companies, people who put ratings, they don't really care, because the derivative markets means nothing for the overall macroeconomic environment. The real assets, the underlying assets and the security that is based upon the value and daily price action actually means something. Everything else is just, I would say, cherry on top, which is, at the end of the day, worthless.